My childhood sweetheart, Vivian Godwin, fell head over heels for the top student in her class. Ethan Ashton, a guy from a poor background. He acted as if money was dirt beneath his feet. When he learned Vivian and I were engaged, he scoffed, "Interarranged marriages? Seriously? That kind of archaic custom is ridiculous in this day and age." Vivian was utterly charmed. She unilaterally broke off our engagement and ran off with him. 5 years later, I took the helm of the Sterling Group. At the handover ceremony, I saw Vivian Godwin again. Thick makeup couldn't hide her exhaustion. Drunk, she tearfully confessed to me that she regretted everything. The next day, Ethan Ashton, who had married into the Godwin family, stormed up to me, furious. Just because you have a few damn dollars, you think you can seduce another man's wife? I've lost all face because of you. Are you satisfied now?" A dead silence fell over the room. Everyone knew the Sterling and Godwin families had a major falling out because of a poor student. The Godwin heiress, for the sake of this student, disregarded the arranged marriage and eloped with him. Eventually, the Godwins relented out of love for their daughter, agreeing to the marriage and ending the farce. Apparently, the drama wasn't over. I couldn't help but frown slightly. Even after years of living in luxury, Ethan Ashton's pride was still so fragile, his deep-seated insecurity impossible to erase. I scanned the room, conscious of all eyes on us, and spoke calmly, "Mr. Ashton, this is a public place. Please watch your words. If you wish to discuss something, I suggest you calm down first. If you continue making baseless accusations, I won't hesitate to have my lawyer contact you." Ethan's face went white, his expression mortified. I studied him impassively. Dressed head to toe in luxury brands, he looked completely different from the poor student of 5 years ago. Only that arrogant yet insecure personality remained unchanged. 5 years ago, Vivian had told me Ethan wasn't like other men. He didn't fawn over her. Instead, he dared to point out her flaws. In his eyes, she wasn't a high and mighty heiress, just a regular classmate. This equal footing felt like a breath of fresh air to her. Everyone in our circle was obsessed with profit, even turning marriage into a transaction. Wealthy couples feigning harmony while leading separate lives were commonplace. One day I saw Vivian and Ethan whispering in the library. Her eyes shone with a light I'd never seen before. I didn't care, but I truly hadn't expected Vivian to break off our engagement for him. I looked at her. "Do you know what this means? You'll lose your inheritance, maybe even be kicked out of the family." Vivian's expression was firm. "Tante has talent, ideals. Unlike you people, who only see money." He's right. True love shouldn't be bound by wealth. Of course, he wasn't like us, because he had no money. I found it laughable that someone as naive and innocent as Vivian could be raised in the dirty world of high society. I agreed to end the engagement. The next day, Vivian and Ethan vanished, taking an overnight train south. Before leaving, Vivian suddenly asked me, "Sincere, did you ever love me?" I didn't answer then. But truthfully, I had felt something subtle for her. My parents had married for love. My father was a talented student from a rural background who got into a top university on merit. He couldn't even afford a suit when he pursued my mother. My mother, Isabella Sterling, moved by his talent, went against her family's wishes and even handed him control of her company. But after my father made it big, he rekindled things with his first love from university. The day my mother caught them together, the next second, they died together in a car crash, a seeming double suicide. My mother couldn't handle the shock. After several suicide attempts, she was committed to a psychiatric hospital. My maternal grandfather, Arthur Sterling Sr., loathed this rural son-in-law for his betrayal and looked at me with similar disgust. I became an insignificant presence in the family, until Vivian Godwin visited and actively invited me out. We gradually grew close, becoming inseparable. Only then did my grandfather start paying attention to me again. He called a family meeting to announce the selection of an heir. I wasn't initially on the list of candidates. Besides my mother, my grandfather had 2 sons, one of whom was illegitimate, Vincent Sterling. My elder uncle, Gerald Sterling, was devoted to pleasure and had no interest in running the family business. It was my younger uncle, Vincent, who was desperately angling for the inheritance, so I saw him as my strongest competitor. Under immense pressure, I studied relentlessly, wanting to prove my abilities to everyone, especially my grandfather. Before graduating, I led the company to several new heights, but these achievements didn't seem to impress him. Not until my engagement to Vivian Godwin was settled. The Godwins were a top family, on par with the Sterlings. An alliance would be mutually beneficial. Only then did my grandfather turn to me and formally announce me as the next head of the Sterling family. Vivian and I were childhood sweethearts from comparable backgrounds. Developing feelings for her was only natural. However, those insignificant affections evaporated after Ethan Ashton appeared. My mother's experience was a stark warning, so I had little positive feeling towards Ethan. That the girl I felt something for liked a guy like him, I could only feel pity. Letting go was the best option for me. No one was going to drag me into that quagmire. Ethan Ashton, with his bookish looks and pale complexion, was now red-faced with anger, pointing at me and yelling, "Sincere Sterling, what the hell are you trying to pull? Why do you keep harassing Vivian? Don't you know this makes you a damn homewrecker?" The room instantly erupted. I could already picture the headlines. Rising business star accused of being a homewrecker, Sincere Sterling, publicly denounced by Vivian Godwin's husband. My assistant immediately cleared the area and strictly forbade any guests from leaking the incident. Annoyed, my voice turned colder, and Mr. Ashton, out of respect for the Godwin family, "I'll overlook this unreasonable behavior today. If there's a next time, you'll face the consequences." With that, I signaled security to escort Ethan out. Returning home that evening, I opened the door to find Victoria Sinclair curled up on the sofa in a red slip dress. She looked up at me, her expression endearingly pitiful. Seeing me, she ran towards me, her sweet voice tinged with grievance, sincere. "I'm jealous." What did she mean by crying like that in public at the banquet? I disentangled myself from her grasp. "Victoria Sinclair, who gave you the code to my door?" Victoria's eyes fluttered, looking utterly vulnerable and charmingly naive. "Arthur Sr. told me to move in." Looking around, I saw the once minimalist room now filled with girly decorations. A warm, romantic atmosphere permeated the space. I frowned involuntarily. Her eyes followed my every move. Seeing my expression, she quickly explained in a soft voice, "Don't be angry. If you don't like it, I'll move out right now." She started to gather her things. I grabbed her wrist. "Forget it. The wedding is only a few months away anyway." Her eyes instantly lit up like stars as she looked at me ecstatically. "You must be tired. Want me to show you the new arrangements?" Curious to see what else she had done, I allowed her to lead me around. Entering the bedroom, one entire wall was covered with photos of us, capturing every moment from when we met to when we got together. The whole display screamed teenage romance. I couldn't suppress a chuckle, my lips curling upwards unintentionally. I decorated a little. "What do you think?" Her eyes were full of anticipation. She looked exactly like a little kitten waiting for its master's affection. It was hard to believe this young woman was the legendary figure known for her decisiveness in the business world. In just 5 years, she had built a massive commercial empire of staggering scale. The Sinclair Group had soared, surpassing all the established families in the capital. And she was only 25 this year, a full 4 years younger than me. In business settings, she always projected an image of being steady and inscrutable. Today, however, I saw the youthful energy appropriate for her age. Not wanting to dampen her enthusiasm, I casually praised, "The photos look great." Victoria paused, a blush instantly spreading across her fair cheeks, reaching her earlobes. She murmured softly, "We can take more photos like this in the future." I suddenly froze. Only then did I realize how intimate our poses were in those photos, making my compliments sound particularly suggestive. Feeling slightly awkward, I feigned composure. It's late. I'm going to rest. I walked upstairs quickly. I wasn't surprised that grandfather had allowed Victoria to move in. Since he fell ill and stepped back, the Sterling family had been in decline. Even with my best efforts, I had merely managed to stabilize the precarious situation. Restoring the family to its former glory was no easy task. He had initially pinned his hopes on the Godwins, but the engagement fell through. Victoria Sinclair's appearance offered new hope. Sincere, he'd said, it's not that grandfather doesn't trust you, but one needs leverage to ride the waves and support to soar. The wise know how to use momentum. The Sinclair family is our best partner. I understood this kind of calculation perfectly. Alliances through marriage had always been a crucial means of consolidating power. As long as it benefited me, I could accept it. My friend Caleb Archer's birthday party was held at a club. Pushing the door open, the first thing I saw was Vivian Godwin and Ethan Ashton sitting closely together. She looked at me resentfully, complex emotions swirling in her eyes. I deliberately avoided her gaze and moved to the furthest end of the sofa. Caleb immediately sidled up, explaining, Vivian said she wanted to come. We're all in the same circle, hard to refuse. Who knew she'd bring that guy along? Unwilling to dwell on it, I took a gift box from my bag. Happy birthday. He eagerly tore open the wrapping, his eyes lighting up instantly. Sincere, you know me too well. Inside was a globally limited edition mechanical watch. Pulling strings to get this watch had taken considerable effort. Caleb winked. Sincere, since you understand me so well, ever consider switching your preferences? Others chimed in teasingly, won't shiv it up. You can't compare to Miss Sinclair. If you ask me, Sincere should just take both alternate days. Just as everyone was laughing, Ethan Ashton suddenly stood up. The cheerful atmosphere died instantly. Everyone exchanged glances. Face grim, he said to Vivian, come outside for a minute. Vivian silently got up and followed him out. The sound of their argument in the hallway was clearly audible. Everyone awkwardly strained their ears. Ethan was agitated. Once you've been staring at Sincere Sterling since we walked in. What's your problem? What else do you want? Vivian's voice was cold. Stop being unreasonable. Me unreasonable? Ethan let out a shrill laugh. Fine, I'll show you what real unreasonable looks like. The door to the private room burst open. Ethan stormed in like a madman. He charged towards me aggressively, pointing at Vivian and yelling, Don't bull and Sincere Sterling. Take this woman if you want her, I don't care anymore. Vivian rushed in, grabbing his arm. Have you lost your mind? Stop embarrassing yourself, we can talk about this at home. Ethan shook off her hand, shouting hysterically, Don't talk about what at home? How you can't forget Sincere Sterling? How you secretly think about him? How you call his name when you're drunk? Ha! I'm embarrassing? Vivian Godwin, stop acting so high and mighty. Who was the one relentlessly chasing me back then? I warned you I despised you rich people's games. Vivian pushed to her limit, her eyes red, shot back. Yes, I pursued you, but Ethan Ashton, don't make me regret it. Ethan looked as if struck by lightning, standing frozen. A deathly silence enveloped the room. Suddenly he laughed, a laugh laced with despair. Finally, you said it. Each word was like a knife, each sentence dripping blood. Vivian collapsed onto the sofa, looking utterly exhausted. I couldn't stand watching this melodrama any longer. And Caleb, I have to go. Ethan darted in front of me like a leopard, eyes burning with fire. Sincere Sterling, you think you can seduce a married woman and walk away scot-free? You beast in human clothing. Without a word, I swung my fist, connecting squarely with his jaw. Ethan staggered back, clutching his face, staring at me in disbelief. I said coldly, Con you leech who acts tough, looking down on the wealthy while enjoying their perks. You have no talent, no career of your own, yet you dare to act tough here? Hitting a nerve, Ethan's face flushed crimson. Who wants your damn money? Think money makes you great. You rich people are disgusting. It wasn't unheard of for men to marry into wealthy families, but those men worked their asses off, afraid of embarrassing their wives. Even my own scumbag dad was highly competent in business. So remember this, I continued. Someone of your status isn't worthy of yelling at me. This remark made Ethan's face flash red and white. He blurted out, I'm not worthy. I look down on trust fund babies like you who only know how to rely on your families, that insulted everyone present. Faces turned ugly. Vivian, if your husband looks down on us, maybe you shouldn't associate with us anymore. Utterly humiliated, Vivian could only apologize profusely and drag Ethan away forcefully. What should have been a happy gathering ended on a sour note. Seeing my mood, Caleb insisted on dragging me to a bar for another round. He expertly summoned a line of female escorts, all stunningly beautiful with incredible figures. He nudged me conspiratorially. First time here, sincere? Don't worry, these girls are professionals. He beckoned to one who resembled a famous actress. Go pour Mr. Sterling a drink. The woman glided over, elegantly kneeling at my feet to pour the wine. I frowned. Get up. Just stand and pour. Caleb took a sip of his drink and leaned in mysteriously. Heard something interesting the other day. He was talking about Ethan Ashton. The man was indeed unusual, scorning wealth. Specifically, after jumping from being a poor student to a wealthy family son-in-law, he meticulously kept his distance from the Godwins. He refused to work for the Godwin Corporation, insisting on making his own way. They offered him a senior position at a renowned publishing house, but he politely declined, determined to find a job based on merit. After sending out dozens of resumes and interviewing for over half a year, he finally landed an editor position at a small publishing house, taking home just over $4,000 a month. Furthermore, he guarded his own family fiercely, preventing them from benefiting from the Godwins' connections. His parents were honest, simple rural folk, timidly agreeing with whatever their son said. But recently, Ethan's younger brother got into trouble. He co-signed a loan for a friend, got caught in a scam, and ended up owing $1.8 million to loan sharks who threatened to break his legs if the money wasn't paid. His family was dirt poor. How could they come up with that kind of money? But for the Godwins, it was pocket change. So his parents went to the publishing house, knelt before Ethan, and tearfully begged him to save his brother. Guess what he did? Ethan produced a bank book containing his entire savings from work, $25,000. His parents were devastated, unable to believe their son could be so heartless. Are you really going to watch your brother get crippled? This will ruin his entire life. This small matter could easily be resolved by the Godwins. If Ethan just asked, the Godwins would handle it immediately. But he stubbornly refused, resolute in his stance, since I chose to be with Vivian Godwin because I love her as a person, not for her family's status. And certainly not for the money, and I don't want the Godwins looking down on me. I don't want to bear the stigma of being a gold digger. I can't stand the gossip. You only envy my current life. But you have no idea how I walk on eggshells every day in the Godwin household. Your brother is your son, but aren't I your biological son too? In reality, the Godwins treated him well. He was just overly sensitive, unable to let go of his pride. The whole affair became public knowledge. When the Godwins found out, they felt embarrassed and offered to help settle the debt, but Ethan rejected their offer. Their kindness rebuffed, the Godwins stopped bothering. It ended with his brother's leg being broken and his parents disowning him. Caleb concluded, all since this Ethan Ashton completely screwed up, saying he chose Vivian for true love unrelated to her family's wealth and status. He's turned a life of luxury into such a miserable existence. He managed to make Vivian fall head over heels for him back then. I thought he must be capable, but this is his level? I smiled faintly. He hasn't changed a bit. People like Ethan Ashton outwardly disdain the wealthy, refuse charity, and act high and mighty. In reality, they are deeply selfish. driving the Godwins' luxury car, living in their mansion, yet unwilling to let his own family benefit. To protect his pitiful pride and reputation, he'd even abandon his own brother. We drank late into the night. Finally, Caleb's driver took me home. I fumbled with the door, tossed my suit jacket onto the sofa, my tie hanging loosely around my neck. I shuffled inside. The living room lights suddenly switched on. The harsh light made me squint. Victoria Sinclair stood in the middle of the room, her gaze icy. "This drunk?" I ignored her, collapsing onto the sofa. My temples throbbed. I closed my eyes and rubbed them. A pair of soft hands reached out, gently massaging my temples. Victoria softened her voice. "You get migraines easily, yet you always drink so much." I frowned irritably. "Tell the old master to stop meddling in my affairs." The massaging hands paused. I opened my eyes and looked at Victoria steadily. A flicker of hurt crossed her eyes. "Sincere, do you have a problem with me?" I pinched her delicate chin, a playful smirk on my face. "Little one, don't overthink it. Marriage is just a transaction of interests." Victoria's eyes instantly turned red. She bit her lips stubbornly, her voice choked with tears. "But I like you." I found it somewhat amusing, yet also frustrating. I looked her up and down. Status changes with time and circumstance, but interests never do. Only interests form the most solid bond. Victoria Sinclair, I don't need love. As long as our interests align, I can treat you with respect. She remained silent for a long time, then suddenly asked, "Is it because you still can't forget Vivian Godwin?" I frowned in disgust. "No, I only care about myself. Successful people act out of self-interest, only fools get trapped by emotions." But then, Victoria suddenly smiled. She said she pursued the same things I did, that our interests aligned, making us compatible partners who could definitely treat each other with respect. I was speechless. Honestly, I didn't understand where Victoria's persistence came from, and she wouldn't say when asked. I couldn't be bothered to dig deeper, so I let it be. A few days later, Vivian and I unexpectedly crossed paths at a business reception. Just my luck. I immediately turned to leave, but she hurried after me, "Sincere." I stopped, my tone icy. "We're not close. Please don't use my first name." A flash of pain crossed her eyes. "Why are you being so distant? We grew up together. What happened before was my fault." I cut her off directly. "Enough. If there's nothing else, I'll be going." I started to walk away. Vivian grabbed my arm, tears welling in her eyes. "I realize now the person I love most has always been you. Can you give me a chance? Can we get back together?" I just felt nauseated, a chill running through me. Shaking off her hand, I sneered, "On who you love is none of my business. Sincere Sterling doesn't take back exes. Back then you insisted on breaking the engagement, determined to marry Ethan Ashton. Although we were on opposite sides then, I could still offer some respect for your naive determination. Looking at you now, you can't even hold on to that determination. You're just a shameless, wanton woman." Vivian's face turned deathly pale as she stood frozen in place. This scene was surreptitiously photographed and quickly became the top trending topic online. Although my team acted fast and the topic vanished quickly, online discussion remained heated. Some said Vivian's marriage was in crisis, the son-in-law's dream of marrying into wealth finally shattered. Others spread rumors that I was a homewrecker, still hung up on my ex despite being engaged to Victoria Sinclair, utterly shameless. Ethan Ashton seized the opportunity, posting late at night on social media, hinting that I had interfered in their marriage. Caleb Archer couldn't stand it and directly slammed him on social media. "Keep your disgusting selves away from Sincere. One scheming pretty boy, one backstabbing green tea bitch. You scumbag and bitch are a match made in hell. Just crawl away together." Subsequently, someone dug up the past incidents. Vivian crying uncontrollably at my handover ceremony, Ethan crashing my banquet. Netizens split into factions. Some said this was the fate of a phoenix man, marrying up, deservedly abandoned after failing to climb the social ladder. Others countered that Ethan Ashton had principles, never flaunted wealth using Godwin resources, and theirs was pure love. The internet arguments raged. When my grandfather summoned me back to the old mansion for an explanation, Victoria happened to be with me. She insisted on coming along. Pushing open the study door, Vincent Sterling was already waiting. He immediately seized the chance to mock me. Well, the busy man finally graces us with his presence. Kept the old master waiting quite a while, quite the ego, I retorted coldly. If the company didn't have useless waste like you dragging it down, would I need to be so busy? Grandfather has been wise his whole life. How could he sire such an idiot like you? Vincent erupted in anger, raising his fist to strike me. You ill-bred bastard, I'm your uncle. Victoria stepped forward, pushing him away forcefully. Mr. Sterling, think carefully before you act. Sincere Sterling is not only the Sterling heir but also my future husband. Neither status is one you can touch. Vincent was struck speechless, his face shifting through various shades of anger and frustration. Finally, he managed a sarcastic comment. And Miss Sinclair is certainly magnanimous, unbothered by her fiancé's rampant scandals. Perhaps you also believe a man sowing wild oats is just being worldly and plan to tolerate it? I punched him squarely in the face. Sober now? If that's not enough, I don't mind throwing another. Vincent trembled with rage but didn't dare retaliate, only managing to hiss hysterically. Was I wrong? You promiscuous bastard. Just like your father. Expressionless, I landed 2 more punches. Keep going. Let's see if your mouth is tougher than my fist. He shook with fury, panting heavily, sneaking a glance at the old master seated at the head. Arthur Sr. sat impassively, slowly sipping his tea, observing our dispute with cold detachment. I sneered. And scared to talk now? The tabloids invent nonsense, and instead of helping me clarify, you add fuel to the fire. What, were you behind this? Since Victoria and I got engaged, he had completely lost any chance of becoming heir. Resentful, he opposed me at every turn. Vincent panicked, denying vehemently. Don't slander me. I don't know what you're talking about. I spoke slowly, deliberately. If you don't understand, fine. But let me remind you, the prosperity of the Sterling family depends on unity. You and I are both Sterlings. We rise and fall together. Don't try to be clever and end up hurting yourself. The old master finally spoke. Sincere is right. Vincent, apologize to him. Vincent ground his teeth, forcing out through clenched jaws. Sorry. I smiled warmly. It's all right. Ignorant people can always improve by reading more. This hit Vincent where it hurt most. Before being acknowledged by the Sterling family, he had been an uneducated street punk. He dropped out before even finishing middle school. Although the family later provided him with the best educational resources, it was too late. Like a rotten fruit, he was beyond saving. Therefore, he hated being called uncultured. Vincent finally snapped, slamming the door shut as he left. Victoria held my hand, looking gently towards my grandfather. Arthur Sr., please don't pay any mind to those outside rumors. Sincere and I are deeply committed to each other. The old master smiled. Stay for a simple meal. Several years ago, I began investing in artificial intelligence, and the results were remarkable. The Sterling Group's financial reports stunned the entire industry. Revenue increased by 20%, and profits nearly doubled. It was a record performance. From that point on, I was the designated heir to the Sterling Group. Over the past few years, my ability to manage the group on behalf of my grandfather was undeniable. On the day I officially took over, Sterling stocks soared, hitting the daily limit. Grandfather threw a lavish celebration banquet, inviting business leaders and media reporters. Ethan Ashton and Vivian Godwin attended with her parents. Gregory Godwin, wanting to mend ties between the families, chatted amiably with my grandfather, as if past grievances were forgotten. Gloria Godwin pulled me aside. And Sincere is such a good child, I watched him grow up. So much better than those two disappointments of mine. The Godwins only had one daughter, Vivian. Her words clearly had a target, and it was obvious who she meant. Gloria Godwin continued her complaints. It's all Vivian's fault for being blind, letting go of such a golden goose to chase after some sour, pedantic poor scholar. Ethan's face turned livid. He clenched his jaw silently, his nails digging into his palms. I smiled politely without replying. Just then, Victoria appeared opportunely and led me away. During the press interview session, Ethan Ashton suddenly stood up and challenged me publicly. "Unsincere Sterling, what makes you think you deserve this position? You're nothing but trash who relies on connections." The Godwin family looked mortified, their eyes filled with disappointment. I answered calmly, "Do you understand what win-win cooperation means? Business is like war. Going it alone is never as effective as a powerful alliance." Ethan, speechless, decided to throw caution to the wind. "Everyone's talking about it. 5 years ago, you used breaking the engagement as leverage to steal a multi-million-dollar project from the Godwins. Now you've latched onto the Sinclair heiress to solidify your position. Your success is entirely built on exploiting your two fiancés. What's your explanation for that?" I gave a contemptuous smile. "You people always say the rich rely on connections, on background. But do you know, the effort and pressure endured by those who reach this position are unimaginable for ordinary people. We rely on real ability. Why should we be subjected to gossip and criticism?" This bold statement immediately caused a stir. It's strange. Throughout history, ordinary people have harbored resentment towards the rich. These people control public opinion. They set impossibly high standards for the wealthy, demanding perfection, absolute independence, especially from women. Otherwise, they face collective attack. Why should I be bound by these rules? Why can't I redefine the rules of the game? Victoria Sinclair stood up and gracefully walked to my side. "Sincere is right. Success is never a solo endeavor. I believe in his abilities, and I am willing to join hands with him." The video of this interview spread rapidly online. Trending lists on major platforms exploded. Sincere Sterling admits leveraging female power, redefining win-win cooperation. The Sterling-Sinclair CP is two sweet netizens engaged in heated discussions, some supportive, some critical, but the craziest were the fans shipping our CP couple pairing. Clips of Victoria and me looking at each other were edited into countless CP videos, spreading like wildfire online. Meanwhile, the scandal about Ethan forcing his own brother to have his leg broken to protect himself was also unearthed. The public was stunned. Everyone felt he should have had a bright future, yet after marrying into wealth, he achieved nothing. He neither leveraged family resources for self-improvement nor accumulated wealth. Instead, he alienated his family and ended up empty-handed. This wasn't devotion, this was mental illness. My mother, who had suffered from mental illness for many years, suddenly expressed a wish to meet me and Victoria Sinclair. She was recuperating at a sanatorium in the mountains. When she first met Victoria, her expression was clear, her gaze gentle as she studied her for a long moment before saying affectionately, "Are you my son's fiancée?" Victoria responded gracefully, "Yes, Mrs. Sterling." She smiled, relieved. "Saw that video of you defending Sincere. Knowing he has you by his side puts my mind at ease as a mother." Then, turning to me, tears welled in her eyes. "Sincere, Mom is so sorry." My heart was already calm. In the past, I had felt both pity and resentment towards her. I hated that she wasn't there for me when I was struggling and facing cold shoulders. I often imagined if I disappeared, would she finally become lucid? But as time passed, I gradually understood. She was also a victim. If not for that accident, she would surely love and cherish me just like this. I said softly, Mom, I'm doing well now. You need to take care of yourself too. Stay healthy." Hearing this, her eyes glistened with relieved tears. Leaving the sanatorium, I stared out the car window, lost in thought. Victoria drove me to the seaside. Listening to the waves crash against the shore, she whispered softly, "Sincere, lean on me and rest for a moment. You deserve a chance to breathe." I nestled against her, finally letting down all my defenses, crying silently. The bitterness of years spent struggling alone poured out in that moment. The climb to the summit was fraught with thorns, but I had finally reached the peak. The next time I heard news of Ethan Ashton and Vivian Godwin, it was rumors of their marriage falling apart. Their once grand wedding now seemed like nothing but a fleeting illusion. The dream had finally shattered. Vivian seemed to have grown somewhat after her failed marriage. She ventured into the publishing industry but lacked business acumen, made successive poor decisions, and her career declined steadily. To secure funding from Sterling Group, she humbled herself several times requesting meetings, all of which I declined. Ethan Ashton lost his job at the publishing house too. The failure of his marriage left him distraught and unable to focus on work, constantly muttering, "Ain where love was supposed to be pure, untainted by worldly greed." Why did it end up like this? His naive idealism was a double-edged sword. It was the very quality that had captivated Vivian. It could be said that what made him also destroyed him. Ethan Ashton eventually chose to leave the city, disappearing without a trace. On our wedding night, as Victoria Sinclair and I were caught in a moment of deep passion, at the peak of intimacy, I suddenly stopped and asked her what she was truly after. She gazed at me, a hint of helplessness in her exquisite eyes. Her waterfall of dark hair framed her face, a faint, elegant fragrance surrounding her. Her expression was both tender and firm. Asking this now, "Sincere, you really are ruthless." My tone was cold. "Are you going to tell me or not?" She sighed softly and began to recount the past. She first met me at a Sterling family banquet. At the time, I was being ignored by everyone, but remained elegant and composed, my bearing neither servile nor overbearing. She was drawn to my calm demeanor and approached me. "It takes courage to be yourself in a place like this." The memory surfaced abruptly. It had indeed happened, but at the time, I thought her comment superfluous. It wasn't intentional. I was simply accustomed to such situations. Later, when she learned of my engagement to Vivian Godwin, she felt incredibly anxious. But back then, she had just taken over her family's business and was still learning the ropes. A year later, when Vivian broke off the engagement for Ethan Ashton, Victoria wanted to confess her feelings immediately but was confronted with a crisis in the Sinclair Group and had to focus all her energy on managing it. The Sinclair family was facing hardship then, and she didn't want to drag me into the whirlpool. Only after she had successfully revived the Sinclair Group did she finally find the courage to approach me and propose an alliance through marriage. It turned out she had fallen for me at first sight, and the maidenly feeling she harbored had never changed. Hearing this story, my heart filled with complex emotions. Victoria gazed at me, her voice soft. "Sincere, my heart has never changed." I responded to her sincerity with a passionate kiss. The temperature in the room gradually rose. This time I was willing to lower my guard, to trust her completely. Career and love, I would let go of neither. After I was revealed to be the true heir, I brutally dumped my girlfriend. Not only that, but I also humiliated her mercilessly. Heartbroken, she went abroad to study and didn't return for 5 years. As a high-flying investor, she even mentioned me in an interview with reporters. She said she was grateful I had abandoned her, that she wouldn't be where she is today without me. But she doesn't know the truth. I died the day she left the country. Chapter 1. I floated in mid-air, watching the woman surrounded by a crowd. It had been 5 years, and Victoria Graham had matured considerably. Unlike the naive girl from the past, she was confident and eloquent. In front of the reporters, her eyes filled with self-assurance. Then a reporter suddenly asked what had motivated Victoria to get to where she is today. The woman froze for a moment, then slowly curled her lips into an icy smile. My ex-boyfriend, I suppose. If he hadn't dumped me so brutally back then, I probably wouldn't be who I am today. So in that sense, I should thank him. Through the crowd, our eyes met. Hers were filled with hatred and mockery. For some reason, even as someone who no longer had a heart, I could still feel a pang of heartache. A gust of wind blew past, and I reached up to cover the empty space in my chest. My throat felt tight, as if something was lodged in it. Did Victoria really hate me that much? I followed Victoria all the way to an apartment building. She opened the door and threw herself into another man's arms. "Vicky, you're finally back." The man's arms tightened, holding Victoria securely. When I saw his face clearly, my breath caught in my throat. Of all people, why did it have to be Ethan Sinclair? He was the main culprit behind my demise. Victoria, however, looked at him with complete dependency, her expression soft and affectionate. Watching them, I suddenly felt like I couldn't breathe. She loved Ethan, I could see it. Closing my eyes, I was flooded with memories of how we used to be. Once, she and I were just as happy. She would cling to me, whining that she wanted ice cream. I would pretend to be stern, lightly flicking her forehead. "Do you know what day it is? You're the one who gets a stomachache from the cold." Victoria would pout and turn her head away. But I would step out for a bit and return with an ice cream in my hand. It was always strawberry, her favorite flavor. Just one bite, I'd say. Her face would instantly break into a radiant smile. "Aji, you're the best." In that moment, looking at Victoria, my heart would melt completely. But now, everything had changed. The love we shared since childhood couldn't withstand the 5 years she spent abroad. She had finally fallen in love with someone else. Chapter 2. "Thank you for coming back early to get our home ready, Ethan." The woman gently kissed the man's cheek, her eyes filled with tenderness. "You can put me down now? Your heart isn't strong, Ethan. Don't overexert yourself." At that moment, I felt a string in my mind snap. Did she know? My gaze was fixed on the two of them. Ethan didn't let go immediately. Instead, he spun her around a few times before setting her down. "Don't worry, Vicky. I'm completely fine now." Victoria's brow relaxed at his words, her tone filled with relief. "Thank heavens. You survived a near-fatal car accident and found a perfectly matched heart just in time." In that instant, I was certain Victoria didn't know the truth. But what followed was an endless wave of sorrow. She was so relieved now because the man she loved was alive and healthy. What would she think if she knew that the heart beating in Ethan's chest was mine? What if she knew that the car accident I was in had been orchestrated by Ethan's parents, Marcus and Eleanor Sinclair, all to make me voluntarily agree to the heart transplant? How would she feel then? Would there be even a flicker of sadness in her heart? Victoria and I were childhood sweethearts. We grew up together, went to school together. In high school, I promised her we would get into the same university. The night before our college entrance exams, Victoria and I made a wish under the moon, to pass with flying colors and have our dreams come true. I dared to take her hand and she squeezed it back. "Will this mess up our exams tomorrow?" she asked. Meeting the girl's mischievous gaze, I couldn't help but smile. Of course not. She looked straight at me without speaking, but her eyes said more than 1,000 words. We both knew how the other felt. After the exams, Victoria and I got into the same university as we had wished and officially started dating. For 4 years, we were the campus couple everyone envied. Victoria and I worked hard, fighting for our future together. Every single plan I made for the future had Victoria in it. Chapter 3. At a university, every department had study abroad spots, and Victoria and I were both competing for one. She said we both had to fight for it to build a better future. That was until the Sinclair family came to me with a proposition. They wanted me to give my heart to save their son. It was such an absurd request that my immediate reaction was to refuse. The very next day, Victoria excitedly told me she had found a high-paying part-time job, tutoring the Sinclair's only son, Ethan Sinclair. Aji, I heard that Ethan has a heart condition, which is why he needs a private tutor. It's $1,000 an hour. We can definitely save enough for our study abroad fund. Seeing her so excited, I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the unbelievable offer. But fate seemed to be playing a cruel joke on me. My dad, Robert Clark, was diagnosed with a malignant tumor and needed a huge amount of money for surgery. That's when Ethan's parents descended like saviors, repeating their demand. "I'll give you a large sum of money for your father's treatment," Marcus Sinclair said. "I will also have a word with the university and arrange for the fully funded study, a broad spot in the finance department to be given to Victoria Graham. So what do you think? Care to reconsider?" In that moment, I gave in. But I wasn't resigned. Why me? I was so young. I had someone I wanted to grow old with. Countless times, I wanted to tell Victoria the truth. I wanted to give up, to live. But then I would see my dad's face, ravaged by illness, and Victoria's exhausted expression when she came home. From her part-time job at night, my mother passed away when I was young, and my dad raised me all by himself. Victoria was running herself ragged, trying to save enough money for us to study abroad. Thinking of them, I finally convinced myself. Agree to it. It's better for everyone. And so the Sinclair family publicly announced that I was their long-lost son, switched at birth. I steeled myself and broke up with Victoria in the cruelest way possible. I knew I couldn't hold her back any longer. Her long future was destined to be without me. The day Victoria left the country, I went to see her off in secret. I only watched her from a distance. After that, I got into the car that was destined for my death, a strange sense of calm washing over me. The moment the brakes failed and the car crashed into the guardrail, the faces of my dad and Victoria flashed through my mind. How I wished I could have spent every day of my life with them. Chapter 4. Victoria and Ethan were all over each other, tumbling onto the bed. I couldn't stop myself from fleeing, but even through the door, the sounds were crystal clear. The feeling was like being subjected to death by 1,000 cuts. I stood frozen, unable to breathe. The woman I loved most had fallen for someone else, and that man was my murderer. I would never forget lying on that hospital bed, hovering on the brink of death. The man stood before me, looking down at me with contempt. "Your death served its purpose, you pauper. By the way, your Vicky is such a gentle and patient teacher." I didn't understand what Ethan meant back then, but I did now. He had fallen for Victoria, so right after his heart transplant, he rushed abroad to find her. My emotions churned within me, but I was powerless. What could a dead man do? After what felt like an eternity, the sounds finally subsided. In the evening, Victoria and Ethan emerged from the room, dressed. "Ethan, will you come to the class reunion with me later?" I was stunned. Could she mean our university class reunion? When the two went downstairs, I followed. It had started to drizzle outside and the air was heavy. The car drove to its destination, a high-end club. They pushed open the door to a private room filled with familiar faces. It was, indeed, our university class reunion. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my fiancé, Ethan Sinclair." Victoria wrapped her arm around the man beside her, her face glowing with happiness. The crowd had mixed expressions, but in the end, they all offered their congratulations. After a few rounds of drinks, someone, emboldened by alcohol, let loose. If you ask me, I never would have guessed Sincere Clark was that kind of person. Becomes the real heir and just dumps his girlfriend. And now, she's found her happily ever after with the fake heir. Isn't that just dramatic? The chatter continued until Victoria smashed a bottle on the floor. The loud crash of glass silenced the room instantly. The person who had been speaking sobered up and quickly apologized. But Victoria didn't respond. Instead, she turned to my former roommate and asked, "Where is Sincere Clark now?" "I honestly don't know." Hearing the answer, Victoria scoffed. What a gold digger to think he'd cut off his best friends just like that. He's probably off living the high life somewhere. I looked at her face and couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Victoria, oh Victoria, if you knew I was nothing but a pile of cold bones, could you still say such things? Chapter 5. Beside her, Ethan gently tugged on her sleeve, putting on his usual innocent expression. Vicky, Mr. Clark, I think he mentioned something when he kicked me out of the Sinclair family. He said he was giving Sincere a sum of money to travel the world. Listening to Ethan's sanctimonious words, I could only find it laughable. He was always the true heir. He was never kicked out. Thinking it over, a guess formed in my mind. This was probably his excuse to get close to Victoria. Looking at Victoria, she was, as expected, slightly taken aback. But she recovered quickly, wrapping her arms around Ethan to comfort him. I'm sorry, Ethan. I shouldn't have brought up your painful memories. In that moment, a sliver of foolish hope rose within me. Was Victoria genuinely comforting Ethan, or was she remembering our past? We had promised each other that our honeymoon would be a trip around the world. Now, she must think I was the one who broke our vow first. Ha! How powerless I was. When the reunion ended, the group dispersed. I followed them downstairs and saw that the light drizzle had turned into a downpour. Under the cool night sky, the rain was torrential. Perhaps it was an illusion, but I thought I could feel the dampness. In a daze, my thoughts drifted back to that day. The day I broke up with Victoria, the rain had been just as heavy. Victoria clung to my arm, her eyes pleading. Aji, please, let's not break up, okay? I just turned my head away, biting my lip to hold back the tears. Victoria, don't think I don't know what you're up to. You're just clinging to me because I'm the Sinclair heir now, aren't you? Afraid to lose your meal ticket? I watched as the light in her eyes slowly died and I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them again, they were ice cold. Let me be honest with you. I'm sick and tired of pinching pennies with you. If you know what's good for you, get out of my life. We're not from the same world anymore. Victoria's grip loosened, and she collapsed to the ground. The girl who always took such pride in her appearance was soaked and covered in mud, and I knew that I had lost everything. As I turned to leave, I heard Victoria's desperate cry from behind me. Sincere Clark, you'll regret this. Those painful memories rushed back like a tidal wave. I think perhaps that rain never really stopped. Victoria's gaze drifted into the distance, her thoughts unreadable. Suddenly, a figure rushed out. My heart stopped. It was my dad. Please, I'm begging you, tell me where my Aji is. My dad knelt before Ethan, crying like a child. The mask on Ethan's face finally cracked. Dad, are you confused? You're not my son. My dad's voice was resolute. Victoria seemed to sense that something was wrong. Mr. Clark, what do you mean by that? Chapter 6. Before my dad could speak, a sharp voice cut him off. Dad, realizing his tone, Ethan softened his voice. Dad, did you forget to take your medicine today? Are you feeling confused again? As he spoke, a group of men dressed as doctors hurried over. Mr. Sinclair, our apologies. Your instructions. Ethan shot them a look, and the man stammered and fell silent. What's with this nice guy act? Weren't you the one who locked me up in the sanatorium? My dad sneered, his face hard. Ethan's expression stiffened, but he quickly regained control. Dad, be good and go back with the doctors to take your medicine, okay? The doctors beside him quickly restrained my dad's arms. Watching my dad struggle in pain, I rushed forward but could do nothing. My dad yelled, but a sedative was injected into his arm. He quickly fell quiet and was led away to a car. Ethan frowned, his face etched with sorrow. Vicky, I didn't want you to know about this. After my dad had his tumor removed, he lost part of his memory. He only remembers Sincere as his son. I had no choice but to send him to a sanatorium. As he spoke, the man raised his reddened eyes. Vicky, I know you care a lot about my dad, which is why I didn't want to trouble you with this. Listening from the side, every cell in my body screamed. How could Ethan be so sanctimonious, twisting the truth like this, and yet Victoria looked completely moved. "Ethan, you fool." She rested her head on his shoulder. "How can there be someone as good as you in this world?" Ethan smiled, leaning down to kiss the top of her head. The air around them was thick with happiness, but I was trembling uncontrollably. "Victoria, oh Victoria, has love blinded you completely? During those 5 years abroad, you exchanged sweet nothings with the very person who orchestrated my death. Did you ever even think of me?" A question began to form in my mind. Can a person really change that much? Or perhaps this was who Victoria always was. Maybe the cracks in our relationship had been there all along. She had grown tired of me, and the act I put on was just the final push. Chapter 7. As I thought this, little details from my memory began to surface. After Victoria started tutoring Ethan, there had been subtle changes. She started taking the Sinclair's car home every day, telling me not to bother picking her up from the bus stop. She stopped eating the meals I cooked, saying she had already eaten at the Sinclair's. Perhaps our love had already rotted away. I didn't follow Victoria and Ethan. Instead, I just left. I drifted aimlessly until I reached the sanatorium. Through the window, I saw my dad lying quietly in bed. His hair was now mostly white. I slowly closed my eyes. He must have suspected something. Right before I went into the operating room, my dad had gripped my hand tightly. "Aji, tell me the truth. Are you hiding something from me?" Despite my best efforts to act normal during that time, he had noticed something was wrong. But how could I act as if nothing was happening? I knew with absolute certainty that I was about to leave this world. A blade hung over my head at every moment. Even so, I had to comfort my dad. "Dad, don't overthink it. The surgery's about to start. I'll be waiting for you outside." The moment the operating room doors closed, tears streamed down my face. My dad would not see me waiting. When the doctor announced the surgery was a success, I turned and left with a sense of relief. Then I rushed to the airport. I had to see Victoria off one last time. After this, I would sleep forever, while her future would be a wide open road. The rain fell harder, pulling my thoughts back to the present. After some thought, I drifted back to the old Sinclair estate. I stood quietly on the back hill, looking at a large tree. There was a reason for this. Beneath that tree lay my bones. After the heart transplant, to make their story complete, Marcus and Eleanor Sinclair proposed burying me in the Sinclair family cemetery. But Ethan refused, adamant. "I don't want that pauper defiling our Sinclair family." After some discussion, they set up an empty, nameless tomb for me in the cemetery. To ensure there were no loose ends, my actual remains were buried unceremoniously under this tree, and I had watched the entire process floating in the air. Perhaps this is why I linger in this world. No peace in death, a rootless soul. The sky was ominously dark, and the rain showed no signs of stopping. This had to be the heaviest rain this city had seen in a decade. Chapter 8. Staring at the distant sky, I felt a chill run through me. I found a place to shelter from the rain and returned to Victoria's apartment early the next morning. I wanted to see just how long Ethan could keep up his act. Looking at the clothes scattered on the floor, my heart was already calm. A phone rang, and Ethan tiptoed out of the room. "Dad, what's up?" I tensed. He must be talking to Marcus Sinclair. I don't know what was said on the other end, but the man's voice suddenly shot up. Realizing his outburst, Ethan lowered his voice. "Damn this weather. If it's been washed out, just put it back." He paused, thinking. "Dad, you have to handle this for me." Perhaps the man was too engrossed, as he didn't even notice Victoria walk up behind him. "Ethan," a pair of hands wrapped loosely around his waist. "Has Mr. Clark recovered his memory?" Ethan's body visibly stiffened. He knew exactly which dad Victoria was talking about. How would he answer this one? I was curious. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Vicky, my dad is still the same. He keeps calling me thinking I'm sincere. To avoid upsetting him, I just have to play along." Victoria accepted this explanation without further questions. Ethan let out a sigh of relief and coaxed her back into the room. Then he dialed the number again. "Dad, I don't care how you handle it, but I will never allow him to be buried." In our family cemetery, only then did I understand the full picture. It seemed the heavy rain yesterday had washed my remains out of the ground. But what a venomous heart this man had that he wouldn't even grant me a proper burial. When Victoria left, I followed her. I didn't expect her to go to the Sinclair estate. "Miss Graham, what can we do for you?" She was a different person now, and it showed. Marcus and Eleanor Sinclair were exceedingly respectful, not daring to slight her. "I came today to ask one thing. Where is Sincere Clark now?" She was certainly persistent about me. Marcus froze for a moment before answering. "Aji is still traveling abroad." I pursed my lips. It seemed they had their stories straight, but if I wanted to leave this world, my only hope was for someone to uncover the truth. Could that person be Victoria? I didn't know. Chapter 9. Hearing this answer, Victoria's brows furrowed tightly. "He hasn't come back yet?" Eleanor Sinclair's hand trembled as she poured tea, placing the pot aside. "We feel we owe Aji a great deal, so we won't stand in the way of whatever he wants to do." The words were flawless, leaving no room for suspicion. Victoria lowered her head and spoke, feigning nonchalance. "Give me Sincere Clark's contact information." Not only Marcus and Eleanor, but I too was surprised by her persistence. Aji said he wanted to make a clean break from his past life. "He only sends postcards from time to time," Marcus said. Eleanor, in perfect coordination, pulled some out from under the table. Victoria took them, glanced at them for a second, and tossed them aside. "He's certainly enjoying himself." I looked over. They were all scenic photos with no faces. A few were taken on a yacht, group shots with a bunch of beautiful women. But I was certain these photos were fake. It seemed they had prepared thoroughly, painting me as a playboy, living it up abroad. Who would ever know that I was forever bound to the cold earth? After leaving the Sinclairs, Victoria didn't return to the apartment. I followed her to a place I knew all too well, an old residential complex, the one where we grew up. She took out a key and opened the door to my old home. But I remembered selling the house to pay for my dad's medical bills. It seemed Victoria had bought it. Victoria entered my old room, her hands tracing over every surface with an almost tender touch. I stood blankly. What was she doing now? Then I heard her barely audible whisper, "Aji, I told you would regret this." A bitter laugh escaped my throat unexpectedly. In that moment, I finally understood. How stupid I've been. I had misjudged her completely. Because of one act, she had hated me for all these years. Did she really believe I was a gold digger? I admit, on the day of the breakup, I was torn. I was afraid she would believe me, and afraid she wouldn't. I didn't want to drag her down, but who would want to hurt the person they love like that? Powerless, I struggled and finally gave in. Let me be the bad guy this one time. But I always thought she would eventually move on. I hoped that in her memories I would occupy a fond corner. When my ultimate sacrifice became a joke, my heart felt as if it had plunged into endless darkness. Chapter 10. Victoria lay quietly on my bed. From day to night, if I couldn't see the slight rise and fall of her chest, I would have thought something had happened to her. Finally, she slowly opened her eyes and turned her phone back on. A call came in. "Ethan, I'm coming home now." Her voice was gentle, almost sweet enough to drown in. Victoria got up without a second thought and left, as if her visit today had been nothing but an illusion. As soon as she got home, Ethan played his old trick again. "Vicky, where were you? I missed you so much." I don't know why, but my chest started hurting a lot today. The man rested his head on Victoria's shoulder. She immediately grew concerned. "Ethan, should I take you to the hospital?" Ethan didn't refuse, obediently letting Victoria help him out the door. Ethan lay in the hospital bed with a pale face. I followed Victoria to the doctor's office. "Doctor, is Ethan's heart okay?" the woman asked, seeming extremely worried and restless. I realized this was the surgeon who had performed the heart transplant. Please don't worry, family member. I performed the patient's heart transplant myself. The surgery was very successful. The person in the car accident was a perfect match for the patient. They were born on the same day. What a coincidence. The doctor's casual remark made Victoria freeze for a long time. Born on the same day. She looked as if her soul had been ripped out, until the sharp ring of her phone broke the silence. The police department? I'll be right there. Victoria staggered, seeming flustered. In contrast, I was relatively calm. I already had a good idea of what was happening. When she arrived at the police station, an officer showed her something, and Victoria broke down. Do you recognize the owner of this ring? Victoria nodded, then shook her head, like a madwoman. No, this has to be fake. Yes, this must be fake. She snatched the ring and held it up to the light. When she saw the engraving inside, she covered her face and began to sob. She recognized it. It was the matching ring we had forged together with our own hands. Engraved on the inside were our initials. On the day we broke up, she had taken it off and thrown it into the bushes by the road. But I had gone back to find it after she left. It took me a long time. After a while, Victoria's sobs subsided. She slowly slipped the ring onto her ring finger. It was a perfect fit. Chapter 11. Victoria suddenly laughed, looking up at the officer. Officer, you wanted to ask me something? I knew that someone as smart as Victoria must have figured it out. Ms. Graham, a sanitation worker on the outskirts of the city, found a human hand bone, a good luck charm, and this ring at the base of a hill. The information inside the charm was yours, so we contacted you to ask for some information about the owner of the hand bone. That good luck charm was indeed something I was clutching tightly when I died. The feeling of bleeding out was so desperate, like I was falling endlessly into an abyss. Hearing this, the last thread of composure in Victoria's mind snapped. It can't be Aji's. He's still abroad. The officer caught the key part of her sentence and asked, "What is the full name of the Aji you mentioned?" Sincere Clark. His name is Sincere Clark, but he went abroad 5 years ago. It can't possibly be him. The officer at the computer typed, his expression growing more and more grim. Miss Graham, the Sincere Clark you mentioned has no record of ever leaving the country. Fake, it must be fake. The woman suddenly became agitated, her expression frantic. Miss Graham, please calm down. The hill is a private residential area. We've already sent people to investigate. At that moment, the woman's body jolted as if she had realized something. Officer, I have an urgent matter to attend to. With that, she practically ran out of the station. Victoria floored it to the hospital and went straight to Ethan's room. But she stopped dead in her tracks outside the door. A fierce argument was erupting inside. The police are investigating the back hill now. What do you want me to do if you had just agreed to bury him? In the cemetery, we wouldn't have all this trouble. Marcus Sinclair paced back and forth in the room, ranting. Seeing this, I couldn't help but sneer. The truth will always come out. All right, Dad. Ethan softened his tone. Sincere Clark is an outsider. Why should he be allowed in our family cemetery? It was his honor to contribute his heart. The money for his dad's treatment and Vicky's study abroad was paid in full. The priority now is to get past the police. We'll stick to our original story. We handled that car accident cleanly anyway. Through the door, Victoria's mouth hung open in shock. The conversation inside continued, but the woman moved as if her soul had been torn away. Victoria, this act of deep affection you're putting on is truly nauseating. Then again, I thought, I'll probably be able to leave soon. A sense of relief washed over me. Chapter 12. Victoria finally stopped at a street corner outside the hospital. The traffic was endless, people coming and going. Her eyes were vacant, as if searching for something. Across the crowd, our gazes met for a moment. She suddenly crouched down, tears falling one by one onto the pavement. Passers-by instinctively moved around her small figure. After what felt like an eternity, her phone rang. It didn't take much to guess who it was. Who else but Ethan? After answering the call, Victoria took a deep breath. Ethan, don't worry, I'm on my way back. When Ethan saw Victoria's calm expression, his furrowed brow relaxed. Vicky, where did you go? Also, I just realized the doctor I saw earlier was the one who performed my surgery. Did he say anything to you? Tisk, tisk. Ethan's attempt to play the victim had backfired. The doctor said your heart is recovering very well, Ethan. Ethan lowered his eyes and picked up an apple from the side table. Is that so? Vicky, let me peel an apple for you. Victoria's expression was unreadable as she suddenly spoke. I just came from the police station. The man's hand paused, and a drop of red blood welled up. Oh, why did the police want to see you? Ethan's voice was a forced calm, full of holes to any listener. But Victoria didn't expose his lie. The police found a good luck charm with my information next to a human bone. They just called me in to ask a few questions. The woman's tone was flat as she took Ethan's injured finger. How could you be so careless? I'll get you a Band-Aid. Ethan carefully observed her expression. Only after confirming there were no cracks in her facade did he relax and smile. It's nothing, Vicky. Just a small cut. But the woman was stubbornly insistent at that moment. No, I'm getting you a Band-Aid. You have to take care of yourself, you know? At that moment, I felt goosebumps all over my body. Was she really saying that to Ethan? At Victoria's strong insistence, Ethan had to stay in the hospital for a full-body checkup before being discharged. Chapter 13. The next morning, the TV in the VIP room broadcast a news story. It reported that a human skeleton had been found buried on the back hill of a villa owned by Marcus Sinclair, a renowned local entrepreneur. Marcus Sinclair and his wife immediately held a press conference to clarify. Please, everyone, don't misunderstand. That was our son, Sincere Clark. He passed away in a car accident 5 years ago. You may not know, but he only returned to the Sinclair family at the age of 22. My wife and I couldn't bear the pain of losing our son, so we buried Aji on the hill closest to us. But we also set up a cenotaph for him in the Sinclair family cemetery. On screen, the pair dabbed at their eyes, sobbing. Only I knew the filthy truth behind their performance. They would do anything for their biological son. The news was followed by a police statement, advising the public on proper burial practices for loved ones. I knew, of course, that this meant the police had found no evidence of murder. Throughout the news report, Victoria quietly fed Ethan his soup. The man in the hospital bed finally let down his guard completely. Vicky, I can't believe Sincere passed away. He paused for a moment, Victoria, calmly set down the soup bowl and wiped Ethan's mouth with a napkin. Ethan, Sincere, and I made a clean break a long time ago. We're about to get married. Why bring up someone irrelevant? Hearing this, a look of immense joy spread across Ethan's face. Vicky, I'm so happy. We can finally be together. I twisted my lips into a sneer, my heart filled with sorrow. Victoria snuggled into Ethan's arms, pressing her head against his chest, right over his heart. I heard her whisper, "Yes, we can finally be together." After leaving the hospital, Ethan threw himself into planning the wedding. He had no idea what Victoria, who claimed to be busy with work, was actually doing. In just 1 month, she brought the Sinclair family's company to its knees. At the final bidding conference, Victoria snatched the crucial project. That could have been the Sinclair Corporation's last chance to recover. Afterward, I followed her back to the Sinclair estate once more. I want Sincere Clark's remains. That was the first thing Victoria said. Marcus Sinclair staggered, and Eleanor Sinclair collapsed onto the sofa. They knew it was all over. Can't you just let Ethan go? Marcus truly loved his son with all his heart. The woman let out a short, sharp laugh. Don't worry, I won't touch Ethan. All you have to do is go to the police and confess to all of your crimes. Chapter 14. That night, the news that a famous entrepreneur had staged a grand drama to secure a heart for his son became the top trending topic. Marcus and Eleanor Sinclair were imprisoned, and the company they had built over many years was destroyed. When Ethan learned from the news that his parents were in jail, he could only force himself to remain calm. "Vicky, I honestly didn't know the heart I received belonged to Sincere." Victoria stared at him, her gaze piercing. "Ethan, of course I believe you." The day before the wedding, Victoria snuck away to the sanatorium where my dad was staying. "Mr. Clark, I came to see you." My dad ignored Victoria's almost fawning attitude. "Aji is dead. I saw the news. I guess that foolish child traded his life for my treatment and your chance to go abroad." Seeing the color drain from the woman's face, my dad coughed heavily. "Get out. I don't want to see you." I desperately wanted to help soothe his coughing, but I was powerless. The woman dropped to her knees in front of my dad with a thud. "I will get justice for Aji." Victoria's eyes were bloodshot, and she suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. My dad turned his head away and muttered that she deserved it. She did deserve it. This was all her own doing. The scale of Victoria and Ethan's wedding was the talk of the city. But on that day, no one saw the bride or the groom. In a cemetery on the outskirts of the city, Ethan knelt before a gravestone. The man's face was pressed against the cold stone, his eyes filled with rage and disbelief. "Victoria, you lied to me because the gravestone was clearly engraved beloved husband, Sincere Clark." Victoria laughed loudly, tears streaming from the corners of her eyes. "Ethan, aren't you tired after acting for all these years? You killed my Aji." I watched from the side, my heart completely still. The sunlight fell on my body, and I knew I was about to disappear. Ethan suddenly started screaming like a madman. "What does that pauper have that I don't now? His woman and his heart are both mine." Hearing this, I couldn't stop my body from trembling. Victoria, unable to bear it any longer, pulled out a knife and plunged it into Ethan's heart. I stared at the scene before me in utter disbelief. Victoria had truly gone mad. "This is what you owe Aji, now it's time to pay it back." Ethan seemed to have been drugged. He had no strength to resist. Blood pooled on the ground. Victoria smiled with satisfaction. "The feeling of bleeding out isn't pleasant, is it?" To my astonishment, she then used the same knife on herself. The woman slowly collapsed, but her gaze gradually came into focus. "Aji, look. I've avenged you." I don't know how she could see me. My body was slowly becoming transparent. "Victoria, this feigned affection of yours is nauseating." In the very end, the last thing I saw was Victoria's face contorted in pain, her eyes wide open. But it no longer had anything to do with me. I am about to be reborn.